My name is Mike. I'm MDT on the Suicide Girls website. I've been shooting since 2014. In that year, my wife decided she wanted to try being a suicide girl. And there was only one photographer in Canada shooting at that time, and then about 6 of us hopeful photographers started shooting. So I've been shooting just over 6 years now. Okay, so the difference between a hopeful photographer and a staff photographer is when you are a staff photographer, when girls contact suicide girls, they give them your name directly. So in Canada we have Shane, she is the only staff photographer in the country. So the rest of us are hopeful photographers. So we shoot girls, still submit to suicide girls. It's all basically the same. The difference is Suicide Girls doesn't directly promote us, although a couple of the hopeful photographers in Canada are on the Trusted Suicide Girl photographer list. So it is a roundabout way of getting girls to connect with you. Like, I've had people directly contact me off of that list.
So it's a bit of a convoluted process, huh?
Yes, yeah, it's a little convoluted because as a photographer, we're not actually allowed to directly contact the official suicide girls and say, I want to shoot with you. So it's more down to the community aspect because they have to know who I am.
So it's mostly for safety reasons.
Yes, yeah, they don't want to suggest photographers that either models have had problems with or that the community just needs to be aware of. So that list is very limited in the whole world. I think there's only about 20 people on the list. So again though, anybody can shoot suicide girl sets. So anybody watching this, if you have friends that want to be a suicide girl, you're allowed to shoot their sets for them. You just have to follow the criteria we all follow when shooting a set. Lita is my wife, and she's been into Suicide Girl since the website was new, and she finally, in 2014, had the confidence that she wanted to actually try to be a suicide girl and start shooting content. So we were shooting lots of Suicide Girl stuff. We would do some shoot fests here and there and network with more of the people. And she has since retired from modeling, but she definitely had a great time doing Suicide Girl sets. So she got me back into photography after a bit of a hiatus. I stopped shooting after I went to college and then picked it up about 5 years later to try and help her in that regard, because at the time Shane was in Montreal, which obviously we can't travel across the country just for her to shoot.
Yeah.
So thankfully at that time, like I said, there was about 6 of us hopeful photographers in Canada that all started at exactly the same time. So we started putting on shoot fests and meet and greets so that the community could meet each other and get to know each other a little better and become a little more tight-knit.
Talk a little bit about shoot fests.
Okay, so a shoot fest tends to be between 6 and I think the largest one we had almost 20 models. We would all rent a house together in a various location and shoot content for 3-4 days. Not always just Suicide Girl sets, like lots of girls shoot OnlyFans stuff. I do a little bit of OnlyFans and Patreon content. And basically you live in a house with 20 people and you see who you get along with and you shoot more content for the people you connect with, because the viewers can actually notice when the girl is more comfortable, because it's all about comfort in the photos, because you want to imagine that the girl is there with you. If they're comfortable with a photographer, it really shows across in photos.
Yeah, it's very true. So what do you do to help make models more comfortable to expedite that process?
A lot of times I will book a lot longer time to shoot. Like I will book an 1.5-hour slot even though it only takes an hour to shoot. That way at the beginning it's more conversational, more like this. That way they get to know me, I get to know them a little bit better. That way the comfort is there. Obviously I know most of the girls online, so we do have online conversations. So it's not, at this point, it's not like meeting somebody, oh, hi, I've never met you.
Exactly.
Come and shoot a photo with me. No, we've been friends online for a while. let's shoot some content because I think it will do well.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about how it felt the first time you had a set purchased by SG.
Okay, so the first time I had a set bought by SG, I was extremely excited, obviously, because it's kind of recognition for the work you're putting in. The staff photographers tend to get purchased a lot because they are well known already within the community. So they are the sets being seen. They have the bigger following, so it is a little bit, I don't want to say easier because it's still a lot of work, but they tend to get sets bought a lot more frequently, whereas a hopeful photographer, the first time you get a set bought, it's extremely exciting because finally, okay, somebody at head office now knows who you are. So it's validating, I'll say.
It's a perfect word for it.
Exactly. So my first set that was purchased was with Mercury, and she's one of the models out of Edmonton. So I've known her about 5 years, and we finally had a set bought together. We did a Doctor Who kind of cosplay set. She was technically dressed as the TARDIS, so I don't know if it counts as a true cosplay set. But yeah, it was just really exciting because she also hadn't had a set bought for a couple of years at that point. So it was just exciting. And recently we had another one chosen, which should be set of the day probably within the next couple of weeks here.
Awesome.
Yeah, so...
hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll be good timing.
Exactly. So yeah, it's really exciting. Anytime any set is purchased, it's exciting. It's the same as when you get published. It's somebody looking at your work and saying, yes, I want that associated with my brand.
So what's your favorite thing about shooting with SG?
My favorite part of shooting with SG, I think, is the community aspect. I've always focused more on the community as opposed to I just want to shoot all of the sets and get bought. Some photographers cherry pick models, I'll say, whereas I want to shoot pretty photos of everybody. Everybody I shoot should look at their sets, and there should be a few photos in there that is their favorite photos. Because everybody is somebody's type, so I want to show that everybody, regardless of how they look, that they can be a suicide girl or a hopeful and actually pursue this to whatever ends they want to go to, whether they officially turn pink or whether they shift their focus and do more publication, or OnlyFans has become gigantic recently, so a lot of girls are shooting almost exclusively content for that. But shooting pretty photos of people helps them realize, yes, there is a market for photos of me because I am somebody's type. Everybody is.
That's lovely. I like that sentiment a lot. So what's your least favorite thing about shooting for suicide girls?
I would say the least interesting part of shooting for suicide girls is shooting sets that don't really get the traction, because sets take almost 4 months to come out once they're submitted. So depending on what it's like at that time, maybe they've shifted their focus on what they're looking at, especially since the style has changed so drastically from when Suicide Girls started to now. Like now it's just traditional bedroom style boudoir, whereas it used to be really edgy. So sometimes people will contact me and want to shoot really edgy stuff like SG used to be. And I'm like, that's not necessarily going to do well. I will shoot it, because if you want that style, I'll shoot it. But I now have to explain to people a little more on what is more likely to be purchased than not.
Yeah, that's always a difficult conversation, because you want to go with that person's artistic vision, but it's also like, does the artistic vision, is that the priority, or is the priority getting to that pink status or whatever?
Exactly, and it's all about what the girl's drive is themselves, because sometimes I'm contacted by models that are just like, I want to do SG for the money so I don't have to work my second job. Well, that's never the reason to do it, because you're not guaranteed to be purchased, you're not guaranteed to turn pink. I've seen a lot of girls over time not turn pink in the end, and they feel personally attacked by it rather than realizing what they did get out of shooting for SG. Because you always get something out of it. It's more about the outlook than official status. Like, my wife was a hopeful and she didn't turn pink. And she's totally fine with that. She got what she needed out of the experience.
I think that's a really important point. I think a lot of people focus on the end result and less on the journey, and I think the journey is a lot more valuable in most cases.
Yes, yeah, the journey is a lot more important than actually turning pink, because it's mostly about the community aspect. If you speak to most of the girls in the community, that's what they're here for. It's for the support of the other girls. Like, there are hopefuls that have been hopefuls for 10 years and they're still shooting sets because they're still getting what they need out of it, and they don't feel it as a negative to be a forever hopeful is the term that we use. But
yeah,
there are a lot of those, and like I said, some of them take it personally and some realize, I got what I needed out of it, now I can move on and do other things.
and it's a business at the end of the day, so if you consider how many different people are submitting things, there's not enough days in the year to pick everyone, right? So
Yeah,
it's tough to remember that part.
yeah, there is a set out every 3 hours right now. So that means that there is 8 sets coming out every single day. So the chance of getting noticed is not extremely high. Granted, there is 2 sets of the day now. When I started shooting, there was only 1 set of the day, so at least they now have twice as many girls either turning pink or getting another set purchased. So that is a bonus. But with so many sets out, you really need to focus on capturing as good of photos as you can that still represent who you are. So one of my favorite blog homeworks was about something that you have accomplished within the year. And it is a bit of an older blog homework, but last year when I had finally had a set purchased, a set of the day, I wrote on that blog homework date because obviously that was the biggest news of my year, because other than shooting photos and having publications, like SG is something that I want more of my sets as set of the day, just so people will see more, because then you get invited to bigger and bigger shoot fests, and then more people want to work with you as you do better, especially being a male in a female-dominated segment of this industry. Like, most of the photographers that I know are female photographers, because it's a lot easier to get that comfort level when you are a female shooting a female. So I wanted to show that being a male doesn't necessarily work to my detriment, because yes, people have had bad experiences with male photographers, but not all of the male photographers are like that. And we've seen a few come and go over the years with stories, and I'm not going to get into names obviously because it's irrelevant who we're talking about, but when that comes across, it negatively affects other male photographers. So then having sets of the day purchased after that just shows that they are recognizing that, yes, I am one of the photographers that you can trust, because I only want to shoot great photos of everybody. There's no ulterior motive in my... Like I'd mentioned, there was some photographers come and go, and the focus on the community aspect really helps when something comes out that everybody realizes it's not just somebody making up stories. Things are happening. So it's very important for photographers to kind of keep up on that. That way I'm not suggesting a photographer that you're not supposed to work with, or that I would be uncomfortable with my wife shooting with, because that is something that comes up. Sometimes photographers, I don't want to say screw over the models, but sometimes you never get photos back, that sort of thing. And if I send somebody to that, that negatively reflects on me. And then if somebody quits because of that, they've essentially quit because I suggested that photographer. So I tend to not suggest photographers to work with. I will say, these are the people that shoot in Canada, and then ask around. Like, don't just trust that I know them. Ask the people they shoot with. And I tell all of the girls that every time is, these are the people that shoot. Talk to the models who shoot with them to ensure that you're going to be comfortable. Because, like I said, if you're not comfortable, it will show in photos that you're uncomfortable. How about a funny story? So here's a funny story that happened at a shoot fest that we held in 2018. I shot a set for Shorty, which, if you're on the website, go check it out. Really good set. And we had shot first thing in the morning. We shot a pool set, and she was on a flotation device. And we shot for about the hour and a half that I like to allot. And later that evening, we were flipping through the photos and realized she never took her sunglasses off. So there was no eye contact photos at all in the set. And you need 3 eye contact photos to make a set. So she styled herself exactly the same and came back the next day, and we shot for an hour for filler shots. So we would look at the set and say, where were you here? Okay, get back in this position and take off your glasses. So we spliced it together, and it looks natural. If you look at the set, you can't really tell. Thankfully, the weather was the same both days. Because, yeah, you definitely need to ensure that you're meeting the criteria of the sets.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was quite a funny situation.
Especially with that like pink and blue wig, like it was just like so obvious as soon as she came in the house, like, oh, you're doing that again?
Yeah.
With all those girls laughing. That's great.
That was so funny. I couldn't believe I didn't think of that. Like,
there are so many times when I look back at a set and I'm just like, what the heck was I thinking? Because like usually you have your
rhythm.
Exactly, like you have your pattern, you know what you do in what order. But then sometimes, like especially in a shoot fest environment, there's so much happening, and part of you just wants to enjoy it, so you don't really think as clearly. At least me, I don't know. I get sucked into the shoot fest environment for sure.
Oh, me too. Yeah, that was exactly it. It was just so much going on, and
especially in that house with that many girls and just chaos constantly in and out. And, oof.
Well, I guess I have another funny story, and you
Go
can feel
for it.
free to use this or not. We were shooting in this giant mansion on the coast, and there was 4 photographers and approximately 20 models all at this house. And we had a whiteboard to try and keep track of who was shooting when, but we weren't paying attention to where we were shooting. So while I was shooting a set for Silvery, Cypher was shooting a set for Series right beside me in the same room. So we were in probably a 10 by 12 foot space, shooting in opposite directions, trying not to get each other in the photos. That was yeah, that was quite the experience to try and get around. Both of the sets turned out okay, so knock on wood, that was fine.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a weird situation.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a ton of those sets at that house, and like after that, I learned that I need to start putting in location for where you shoot as well. Because man, oh man, does that make a difference. I mean, it's fun and hilarious to have those stories, but it's not the most convenient.
Yeah, I was talking to Shane about a shoot fest they did. I think she was in France.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that, and there was only something like 1 bedroom that was appropriate for shooting in. So,
oh my god.
Yeah, it was a bit of a hassle there.
Yeah. So even the best of them run into these things. It makes me feel a little better.
Oh yeah, it's everybody, because the chaos.
Exactly.
That's the only way I can put it. Like, there isn't a lot of big shoot fests going on all the time. Normally it's 1 or 2 photographers because of the chaos of the big shoot fest. It's, okay, where can we shoot? What are we shooting? Who's shooting when? Are you done on time to shoot with this person? Do you have time to do your makeup? Like, you need a lot of factors.
And at that shoot fest, I even had Sarah as the makeup artist. So we actually had to coordinate with a makeup artist. Like,
Yes.
woo, that was tough.
Yeah.
It's kind of impressive how much we got done in that amount of time at that house. Like, we really took advantage of it.
Yes. Yeah, I wish I was there for all 4 of the days, because obviously I was at that conference also the same weekend. So how COVID has affected Shoot Fest is obviously pretty prevalent because travel is drastically cut down. So most people are doing small shoots with just the photographer and maybe a cycle of people coming through to shoot, and obviously sterilizing because we have to make sure everybody's safe. But some of the bigger shoot fests, like there was one planned in July in LA that I was going to go to, put on by Tiger Lily. And most of the photographers were foreign photographers because obviously it's harder to get the foreign photographers to go. Like, I'm in Canada, some of them were coming from Australia, like from all over the place. And they had to entirely reschedule to next year. So now it's going to be next May. And they are still doing smaller shoot fests in the interim because obviously girls want content. The website still needs content. But just the shift in it used to be wherever you're going, plan to shoot a dozen sets. Well, now it's wherever you're going, shoot 4 sets maybe.
Yeah, you're lucky.
And or shoot while traveling. Like last weekend, Dewey was here. So we shot an SG set. We just got an Airbnb so that we could just shoot a set for her while she was here because she was traveling across the country because I don't get to Ontario very much. Like I haven't been there since 2016, which is a lifetime ago now that I'm thinking about it. But obviously things change and you have to just work within what you can do, shoot more of the local people and travel just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Be smart about when and how you travel.
Yeah, and obviously wear masks.
Yeah.
Gotta wear masks whenever I'm shooting, which fogs up my camera lens, which is really funny. But you have to because you're within 4 feet of people, so it's way too close to not. Because obviously the models can't be wearing a mask or the sets would look really weird.
I'm waiting for a COVID set. Like, it's gonna happen. Someone has to model with a mask. Like, there's no way they don't. Maybe they wash their hands and then take their mask off. Like, it would be cute if you did it right.
Yeah. Or,
but it would probably be super overdone after a couple months.
Well, I was going to say, once there is finally a vaccine, maybe somebody will do it as a cosplay set, because they're cosplaying as 2020 models.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I think would be funny, but yeah, it's definitely a strange situation to be shooting this year.
Yeah.
I've almost shot nothing since March. Like, I only started shooting again last week.
Shit, yeah.
So I've worked with a few of the Canadian girls that live near me. I went and stayed with one last weekend, so I shot a set, or content. I didn't shoot an SG set for her, but I shot an OnlyFans thing for her. So at least there is other outlets now. It used to be it was an SG set, or it sits in your Dropbox forever and you don't know what to do with it.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Zibity was like this long, and Patreon almost worked, but it wasn't quite as sex worker friendly, and then OnlyFans took over.
Yeah, I only recently found out that Patreon isn't very sex worker friendly.
Yeah.
That was the one that I used to say, I'll shoot SG or Patreon sets. I'm like, oh, well now it's OnlyFans or SG sets, and that's about it now. So
exactly. It is improving, and honestly, the pandemic's made people more open-minded to sex work, because what's the point of job shaming someone in a pandemic?
Yeah.
Right?
At least they have a job.
Exactly. They're making some money.
The surprising thing to me is people still paying for content when their job security is less.
Yeah, it's true.
But at least it seems to be going well. I keep seeing people post about what percentage they are on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
It's going up. So.
And that concludes another episode. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.